Hello friends, welcome to PHP Complete Guide for Beginners. Today's lecture will focus on PHP loops and functions. In any programming language, PHP, C, Java, there are situations where you want to iteratively do something in the code. If there are 20 books in the database and you want to display information about those 20 books, it's not a good idea to fetch the data for each and every book and write 20 lines of code. You would rather iterate the database and have one line of code in a loop where you will display all the information, relevant information which you want to display in your application about that book. PHP gives predominantly four types of loop constructs. The first one is while loop. In while loop, you check the condition right at the start of the loop. While loop will always check the condition or the expression right at the start. If the expression is good, it returns a true value. Then it goes inside and executes the block of the code. Do while loop is similar to while loop. However, here the expression or the condition to iterate through the block of code is checked towards the end of the loop. The principal difference between while loop and a do while loop is that in do while loop, the block of code will be executed once for sure, the first time. Because in do while loop, we are checking the condition absolutely at the end, or at least once the code will be executed. However, in the while loop, we are checking our expression right at the start. So it is quite possible that the code is not executed even once if the condition is not met. It will become more clear when we go to our sandbox. Next type of loop is for loop. For loop is used in situations where we know in advance that how many times we want to loop through the code. The last one is for each loop. This is used to iterate through an array. Array is a collection of values, and for each is used very effectively to iterate on those. I will introduce you to for each loop in our next lecture, which will be on arrays, which would make more sense for you to understand and appreciate for each loop. Before moving on to functions, let's go to our sandbox for loops and try to understand them. I go in my item browser and this is a sandbox which I have created. Here we see that we have defined a variable r number and I have initialized it to 0. This is a while loop where we are saying while r number is less than or equal to 100. So as long as the number is less than or equal to 100, we are printing echo r number. This is a label, and here we are concatenating it with our value of our number, and further we are concatenating it with a constant br which we have defined right at the start. I hope by now it is very clear to you how we are presenting this echo statement, much like in our earlier lectures. Next statement, here we are using increment operator by increasing our variable value by 5. So this you can read simply as our number is equals to r number plus 5. So every time this is executed, it is increasing the value of r number by 5. When you review this code, you will see that initial value is 0. This loop is good till the time the value of the variable is less than or equal to 100. Every time we are incrementing it by 5. So we will see first it will print 0, then 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, like skip counting till 100. So we should see 21 lines displayed in our browser. Let's try to go to our browser and see. As you can see here, it starts from 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 and goes up till 100. So as expected. Now I want to introduce you to a keyword, a reserve word in PHP called break. So break is used in situations where you want to come out of loop and you want to provide that exception handling. suppose I want to exit this code if the value of our number becomes 50. So if value of our variable equals 50, then we want to break. So this effectively what it will do is that it will try to print from 0, 5, 10, 15, 20. However, when it reaches 50, it will print 50 also, but it will never print 55 because the code will come out of this loop once it reaches 50. So let's save it and then try to refresh our browser. So yeah, so it starts from 0. Once it reaches 50, the code breaks and it comes out. This is a classic example of a while loop. Let me comment this construct and let's go to our next construct, which is a do while loop. For understanding do while loop, we have a variable x which is initialized to 6. As I mentioned earlier, do while loop always will execute at least once because here the condition is checked towards the end. In while loop we had condition checked right at the start. In do while loop we have condition checked absolutely at the end of the loop. So this guarantees that our code will execute for sure once. Do, and this is just a print statement. Label is $x is and value is concatenated of variable x while x is less than equal to 5. As you can see that our initial value is 6 and here we want to execute this do while loop as long as x is less than equal to 5, which is not true. So I have done this to make you understand that this loop, even if the condition is it's not holding good, still this loop will be executed once. So let me save this and let me comment this for now just to make it easier for you to understand the output. So let's save this and go to our browser, refresh it. So if you see here $x is 6, our echo statement indeed is executed, even though in this do while construct the condition is not holding good. Still, since we are checking the condition towards the end, we get our output printed. Let me comment this do while now and let's move on to our for construct. We have 3 things which we pass to the for function or the for loop construct. The first is we initialize the variable, then we put our condition, what condition we want to check, and third one is step, what step we want to do every time the loop executes. Here we initialize a variable y by 1 and then we are doing this, iterating this loop till y is less than equal to 10, and every time we are incrementing y by 1 and then we are printing simply y, and here this is the label $y colon and this is the value which we are concatenating with this string literal, and then we are concatenating with the constant br. So we should see from 1 to 10. Let's save this, go back to the browser, refresh. So you see there from 1 to 10 we have displayed successfully the values using the for loop. Coming back here, I want to introduce now something similar to break, a keyword. This keyword is continue. So continue is break. How it did was it gave us exit route, or when we want to exit through a loop we called break and we came out of the loop. Like here we came out when it reached 50. For understanding continue, I think it will be making more sense if I do it. If y, we check our variable, is equals to 5, then what we want to do is continue. So essentially what this piece of code will do is when y reaches 5, it will continue. It will continue to the next iteration. It will not execute any code after this line. So once y reaches 5, it will move on to the next loop. So effect of this will be that we will get 1, 2, 3, 4. Once 5 is there, it will move on to next. So the print or the output would be 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 will be skipped, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Once it reaches 10, it comes out. So let me save this and try to refresh our browser. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 is skipped by virtue of continue statement, and then we continue with, then we have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this was continue statement. PHP function. So PHP is very powerful language. One major reason of that is that it has a very wide repository of inbuilt functions. There are various kinds of functions, numeric functions, string functions, which gives you so much power and makes things easier for you to execute and implement. 1,000+ functions they have, and functions are either inbuilt, like what you see in PHP library, these 1,000+ functions, or they could be user-defined functions. User-defined functions are functions which you and me can define in our code to achieve what we want to achieve from the code. Variables, we understand that in PHP variables are case sensitive. Functions, however, are not case sensitive. Functions can also accept arguments. You can pass 1, 2 or 3 values or 4 values or an array to a function, and then you can use that passed value inside the function to perform a certain operation. Now your question would be that why a function and when a function would be needed. So function would be needed when you want to reuse a code. If there is a set of tasks where 10 steps need to be done and you want to do that task at 20 places in your code or in your project, then you would create that function or that task once, define the 10 steps in that task or in that function, and then in those 20 places in your application you will just call that function and that task will be done. So it's a very efficient way of implementing logic. In every language you will see function. How they are defined, how they are utilized would vary. The syntax would vary, but the concept remains same. They can accept arguments. It could be any number of arguments, and they have ability to return values. So they can return back an integer, a string, or an array, like that. You can use that value which function returns inside an expression, or you can utilize that value and simply display it or print it. This is the syntax of a user-defined function. So we have a function name, a block of code which is really the meat of the function or the content of the function. And in blue, what you see here is how we will make a call to the function. So once you call to the function, then only that block of code is executed. Function arguments can be passed in two ways, passing by value or passing by reference. It will become more clear once we go to our sandbox. However, for now, you can just simply understand that in passing by value, we don't have access to variables which are outside, or any variables which are defined outside the function. We don't have access to those variables inside the function. So the variables which are defined inside a function are local to the function, or they are local variables. They don't have any implication and any impact on variables which are defined outside, even though the variable name is same. So if you define a variable um, $a inside a function, and you define a variable $a outside the function, they are two different uh, instances. However, if you want to impact the variable which is defined outside, you have to use passing by reference, where you will pass the variable inside, and in the function argument you will prefix the variable uh, with ampersand to signify that it's passing by reference. And then when you use the variable inside a function, you will be able to impact the value of the variable which was defined outside the function. It might be a little bit overwhelming to you right now, but once we go to Sandbox, it will become very clear. So let's go to our Sandbox, and here is our Sandbox for functions. Uncomment this first function what we have here, a simple function. So name of the function is calculate sum. It has two arguments of integer a and b. Here we have a variable total which is initialized as a plus b, and then we are printing sum of, this is a label, concatenated with value of a, concatenated with another label, and further value of b is appended to it. Then another literal, a label is appended, is, and then value of variable total. This function essentially accepts two arguments, two integers, and then it totals them and it prints the value of two integers. Here this is outside function, and we are simply calling the and passing two arguments 45 and 67. Let's save this and try to open in our browser. So sum of 45 and 67 is 112. So this is what we achieve from the function. Now, as I mentioned to you, calculate sum 43, 54, calculate sum 456, 5432. So we define the function once, and then we can utilize it multiple times wherever we need it. So here 3 times we have called function. Let me save it and then go to our browser. So you see it has displayed 3 times the value. It is coming in one line because we don't have any break here. So we just append this break once, and magically, since we did do in our function, we will have all correct output in 3 lines just by doing that once in function. Now here we see that is doesn't have a space, so it's not looking that elegant. So if I just go here, change our function once, and then we have a perfectly formatted output. So let me comment this now, and let's try to understand passing by value and passing by argument. So here we have defined our function. Name of the function is operate num. It accepts a parameter, and we are assigning a value 5 in that integer parameter. Outside the function, we initialize a variable a as 60, and then we call our function operate num and pass the value of 60, which is a, inside, and then we print a is value of a. Let me save this and try to run. A is 60. So you see here we initialized outside the function, we initialized a as 60. We made a call to the function. Inside the function, this value goes 60. However, here we are overriding it with as 5. But after the call to the function, when we make a print using echo statement, we still see the value is 60. It is not changed because this variable a, what you see here, is local to this function. The scope of this variable is local to this function. That's why it's called a local variable. The variable what you see here outside function is not available. It's not the same variable as what you see inside. So the scope is different. This variable is what is available to this print statement, this echo statement. That's the reason when we do this echo statement, we see 60 as a value. If we pass this by reference, so if I just prefix this with ampersand here, now we are passing this variable by reference inside, and we are assigning this as 5. Let me save this and try to run this. So now you see it changes to 5. So now what is happening is that in our function definition, we had passing by reference, which we know just by looking at this ampersand. And here in the code, we initialize a variable, integer variable by 60. Then we call this function passing input as a. And this input, when it goes inside, it's not really the value which is going inside. It is passing the address or the reference of this variable in memory. So this address of this variable is passed inside. Now this statement is changing the value of that reference, of that address of variable a, which was outside. Here we change a is equals to 5, and you see this, that our value is indeed 5. Now I want to make certain things clear. Don't get confused by this a and this a. So this could very well be anything, it could be past reference. So I have defined this variable as past reference, and if I run this now, result is same, absolutely, because this past reference is nothing but same address or same memory location what this variable a has. So when the code executes, the flow would be, the first execution statement is a is assigned as 60. Second statement is calling of this function, passing inside the address or the reference of a. This function is called now, and this reference which was passed inside is coming in this variable or past reference. Now this variable we are assigning as 5. It is really same as assigning a as 5 because it's the same reference. Then outside we are printing a is the value of the a, which for sure is 5 because we have changed it inside function. I hope it is clear the difference between passing by value and passing by reference. Thanks very much for your time. So we will meet in our next lecture in the series, which would be on arrays in PHP. So see you there. Thank you.